As Disney continues to make contemporary versions of hits from their catalog, it makes you wonder, which one would they do next? Seeing as they're working away at doing all of the Disney Renaissance 90s musicals, it seems that they'll be on to Hercules once they finish The Little Mermaid, which makes sense. Hercules is a movie that was pretty widely accepted upon its release in 1997, and has since been well respected among fans, even if not as much as other movies from the era like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. I was reminded of this when I did a poll recently to see which future video topics people would be interested in seeing. Many chimed in to share their appreciation for Hercules, which got me to start making a video about the film. Even just sharing my process on this video got more and more people to come out of the woodwork sharing their personal experiences with the movie, with many even going so far as to say that it's their favorite Disney film of all time. But here's the thing, I don't really like Hercules. Well, I guess I do, but not nearly as much as other Disney Renaissance films. The core of it for me is that I'm just not very interested in the story. At the end of the day, I don't really find Hercules to be that personable of a character. I don't have much emotion invested in his storyline by the time I'm done watching the movie. In fact, the constant pop culture references and disjointed storytelling makes me feel even more and more disconnected from the film. But that's not the reason why I'm making this video. After all, Lindsay Ellis made a great video about that I highly recommend you check out. The truth is, Hercules makes me feel confused. And since I'm the YouTube person who talks about Disney music, you can probably imagine that there are songs involved. Let me explain.
Fun to be free, to be on the move, to go for a hike or whatever you like to do. To all there is to be done. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun. To be free, fun to be free.
To accurately describe what makes me feel confused about Hercules, I'll have to break from the tradition of my videos and make a list format type video to organize my thoughts. So 1. The Muses. The Muses are my favorite part of the movie, full stop. Not only that, but I'd say they're some of the best Disney characters ever. They're so charismatic, lovable, and are the stars of so many wonderful songs. Though they're not protagonists, they become the center of the film whenever I watch Hercules. That's how much I love these characters. To talk more about my feelings on the Muses, it's important for me to talk about their creation. And to talk about that, I have to talk about the iconic lyricist and Dreamsounds MVP, Howard Ashman. Though Ashman did not have a direct hand in the music of Hercules, he did have some influence on the film. Before he worked with Disney, Ashman had worked on the musical Little Shop of Horrors with Alan Menken, a comedy horror musical based off of a B film from the 60s. One of the most important and distinctive things about Little Shop was that it featured 3 doo-wop singers that were explicitly and musically coded to represent a 60s girl group. For example, their names in the show are Chiffon, Crystal, and Ronette, all references to specific girl groups of the period. However, the aforementioned characters also borrow from a much earlier theatrical tradition from ancient Greece, specifically the Greek chorus. Within ancient Greek theater, choruses served as commentators on the play. The Greek chorus as a modern concept did not begin with Ashman, though. For example, in Leonard Bernstein's opera Trouble in Tahiti, the Greek chorus is the outside world commenting ironically on how happy married life is, while the main couple's relationship falls apart. So Ashman and Menken took a unique approach to a Greek chorus, having the girl group in Little Shop essentially become narrators that lead the audience through the plot as well as comment on it. However, an important stylistic difference to note is that the chorus in Little Shop interacts with the characters, something that breaks from the tradition of ancient Greek theater. Whenever we visited New York, we would ask Howard what show he would recommend us seeing. On one such trip in 1988 during the production of Mermaid, Howard strongly suggested we see Gospel at Colonus. He said that it was the best thing on Broadway at the time. It was a take on Oedipus at Colonus, a Greek tragedy by Sophocles. This Oedipus at Colonus used the device of a black Pentecostal preacher and his choir to tell the story of the tragic Greek figure Oedipus, his sin, and his redemption. It used call and response and other gospel conventions, although it never mentions Jesus. Now, the irony is that due to a lack of time on that trip, we never wound up seeing the play, although years later I did see a production in Los Angeles. I did, however, check out the cast album when we were developing Hercules, because I remembered Howard's recommendation from years before. It seemed to suggest a way to approach the music in our movie. It seemed appropriate to have a Greek chorus tell us the story, this being, after all, the story of a Greek demigod. And who better than the Muses, the goddesses who inspired art, literature, and science to be this Greek chorus? And since our chorus was to sing about the exploits of the demigods, having them sing gospel, a style of music that celebrates God, seemed appropriate. It was a short step from there to seeing them as an all-girl group like the Supremes and have them musically bridge scenes, do exposition, comment on action, and celebrate the exploits of our mythic hero. Howard had, of course, used a black girl group as a sort of Greek chorus in Little Shop. Because of this, Alan Menken, when we pitched him the idea for our approach, was concerned. He feared it might appear too derivative. Whether or not I was in denial, I don't know, but I felt we could do this in a way that didn't duplicate Little Shop. A gospel approach to the music seemed to us to make the movie more fun and accessible. With music by Alan Menken and lyrics by David Zappel, the Muses officially came to life as an abridged version of the original Greek chorus concept. Like the Greek chorus in Little Shop, the Muses also take on the role of interacting with the main characters, specifically sharing a number with Megara where they help her realize that she's falling in love. Unlike the Greek chorus in Little Shop, though, the music for Hercules takes on the form of gospel music. Aside from being an eccentric choice, this also works well within the context of the film's framing. The film was created by an American company, so a lot of its language uses imagery and concepts based in Western notions of Christianity and worship. So what I'm trying to say is that the idea of taking a literal approach to the Greek chorus by making the chorus a gospel choir aesthetically makes sense when contextualized within the rest of the film. And let me be 1000% clear about this. The Muses are incredible. Lillias White, LaShans, Cheryl Freeman, Roz Ryan, and Venice Thomas give incredible performances and bring the songs to life in unprecedented ways. The songs with the Muses are undoubtedly my favorites in the film, and they essentially lay the groundwork for the visual and musical language of the movie. This doesn't mean that the Muses are free from criticism, though. After all, the gospel music was written by two white men. Even the aforementioned quote from John Musker mentions that Howard Ashman specifically spoke about having black music instead of white music, something that doesn't feel historically accurate when you consider that he worked in musical theater and that the art forms of musicals and early 20th century pop music were so dependent on jazz music. In the I Won't Say I'm in Love scene, the Muses fulfill a prominent supporting role, not only musically but also as characters who encourage Megara to let herself fall in love with Hercules. However, these black women who belt out gospel music only serve a subsidiary role as sexualized women who voice appreciation for Hercules' manly attributes. As women of color, they are not taken seriously as romantic prospects for Hercules, a facet of the film that has been condemned. Instead, they serve as the chorus, both in the plot and musically, working to promote Megara's, but not their own, interests. This portrayal reinforces long-term patterns of women of color in helping roles, part of a matrix of oppression that demands not just improvement, but wholesale redress. That being said, I believe it's important to note that the Muses were one of the first instances of blackness and black characters being put at the forefront of a Disney animated movie. Not only have they become a fan favorite over the years, but their songs have also become some of the most iconic Disney Renaissance songs. 2. One Last Hope. As a song specifically about Phil talking to Hercules about his past and what he needs from Hercules to help him be a good hero, One Last Hope does more than serve its purpose. In the moment, it's charming, comedic, and fun. However, if you broaden your view at all, it starts to feel very out of place. It functions well as a comic relief buddy montage, but I find it to be such an odd outlier in a movie that's mostly a send-off to gospel music. The reason I think this was probably done was because Danny DeVito's voice is more of one for a character actor and not a singer. It's not that he doesn't or that he can't sing, but the song is written for him to emote with his personality, rather than strictly his singing voice. Which brings us to my third point. The film uses the musical format incredibly well. The format of musical theater lends itself so well to cartoons that it's shockingly well done in Hercules. Songs like Zero to Hero really bring to life the suspension of disbelief that many musicals try to capture. The montage scene is commonly done in film, but Hercules connects musical ideas with artistic styles in a way that feels incredibly unified. If you want to learn more about the specific choice, BMask did a great video going more in depth into that. Another thing that Hercules does really well as a musical is that it uses almost all of the songs to explicitly advance the story. Musical theater has a complicated relationship to storytelling. Originating from variety shows, the story started out as being second to the pure entertainment factor of a particular show. This would change in a mainstream sense when the book musical became the lay of the land. Book musical is a term typically used to refer to shows that are dependent on story and whose book, i.e. the text, is completely integrated with the songs. This term was also used to differentiate book musicals from more traditional musicals that often used pop songs that were vague enough to be worked into the story, sometimes leading to multiple musicals having the same songs because they were all popular in the 20s or 30s. The beginning of mainstream book musicals is often thought to have been Oklahoma in 1943, but this is sometimes debated. However, this doesn't mean that the format of musicals has just been book musicals since Oklahoma. For example, Disney musicals occupy some middle point between the two concepts. In a post-Howard Ashman world, when people talk about Disney musicals, they usually just say that, Disney musicals. However, they don't talk about the specific types of musicals that Disney makes. For example, the song Le Poissons from The Little Mermaid is a good example of the difference between what I'm going to label narrative songs and comic ones. It doesn't really add anything to the narrative, it just reiterates the fact that Sebastian does not want to be eaten. There are animation gags thrown in to make it clear what he fears, but ultimately it's more of a comic song that's meant to entertain the audience, and not a song that's used in collaboration with text to specifically advance the narrative. Disney musicals typically vary in terms of which songs are actually important to the stories, but Hercules is interesting in the sense that most of the numbers really do serve the purpose of the narrative. This is best exemplified by the I Want song, Go the Distance. Not only is it unique in the sense that it's an I Want song sung by a male protagonist, but it also has dialogue interspersed throughout the song to show how the character develops over the course of the number. This is driven even more home by the fact that there are two reprises on the soundtrack that are arguably all part of the same number. 4. I Won't Say I'm in Love. This song is absolutely delightful. I just love the musical interplay between Megara and the Muses. The percussion of this song is also very interesting, turning the gospel theme of this film into a more 60s girl group sound a la Little Shop. Something interesting to note musically is that the drums during the chorus seem to be referencing the iconic intro for the Ronettes song Be My Baby, arguably one of the most popular 60s girl group songs of all time.
No chance, no way, I won't say you don't know.
The chord progression of 1-6-4-5 is also colloquially known as the doo-wop progression, definitely leaning into the sound of the time even more. However, possibly the best thing about this song is what it represents for the character. Megara is not only a unique character, but her music also reflects her independent personality. Did you know that there was originally going to be an emotional ballad for her called I Can't Believe My Heart? It was scrapped once it was realized that Meg probably wouldn't sing such an emotional ballad, instead giving her the upbeat number of I Won't Say I'm in Love. The original number is a good song, but I recommend that you listen to it and see what I mean about the fact that it feels a bit out of place in a film with such a fast-paced soundtrack. I don't have much else to say about this song other than the fact that I just love it to bits, and especially appreciate the girl group era orchestration and composition. Also, Susan Egan sounded amazing when she recorded it, and continues to sound amazing when singing it almost 25 years later. 5. A Star is Born. Once the movie is over, A Star is Born plays to commemorate the journey that Hercules has taken throughout the film. At least that's what I think it was meant to signify. For me, I can't help but see the song as just, okay, the movie's over now, because that's all the lyrics really convey. I think it's possible to have songs that do nothing more than signify the end of the movie, but A Star is Born? I guess there's a biblical reference being connected between Hercules' inherently divine nature and the birth of Jesus, but I fail to see how that ends the movie on a narrative note. And sure enough, the second half of the song serves as the beginning of the credits. But don't get it twisted, this song is great. From a musical perspective, few Disney songs get me as pumped as this one, which makes it even more sad that it's often left out when people talk about music from Hercules. So, while I can understand and enjoy A Star is Born, it still makes me wonder why it was put there in the first place. I wanted to end on this song because I think that sentiment really does reflect my thoughts on Hercules in general. But that's where we come to the notion of criticism. When making this video, all I could think about was how much people loved this movie and how I wanted to make a video that did it justice. The platform of YouTube seemingly thrives on negative criticism, with most videos talking about media mainly being about why certain things are bad. It's not that I'm not critical of things. I mean, all you have to do is watch my videos on Ferdinand the Bull or Splash Mountain to find that out. But I feel like all of the things that I critiqued in both of those videos were more about social issues that I'm passionate about, and less about the art in question, but how it represented oppression in society. Let me try and say it another way. I love the singer-songwriter Sufjan Stevens. The first album I truly fell in love with from him was his 2005 record Illinois, a sprawling masterpiece that's 22 tracks long, but only about half of the tracks are actually full-length songs, with the rest of them being interludes or transitions. This is much different than his 2015 album Carrie and Lowell, a heartbreaking album that follows Sufjan as he grieves after the death of his mother. There are also interludes on Carrie and Lowell, but they are much more contained than on Illinois, and instead all 11 tracks on the album feel like the focus. In other words, you could take any track and see it as something bringing the narrative forward, a complete product. This is much different than on Illinois. If I were showing somebody the album and randomly flipped to the 6-second track of Applause, I'd probably switch to another song that I felt represented the album better. This is why I'm more inclined to say that my favorite Sufjan album is Carrie and Lowell. I think each track represents what the album is, and that not only makes it more concise, but easier for me to pop in and listen to, without requiring me to listen to the entire thing at once. This doesn't mean that I dislike Illinois though, it's just an album that's constructed differently and therefore serves a different purpose. And I think it's perfectly possible to have this utilitarian utilitarian approach to art. After all, each piece of art or album or movie serves a different purpose, and I think sometimes it feels unfair to compare them. I wouldn't judge a spoon for not being a knife. I feel similarly about Hercules. There are parts of the movie that I don't enjoy as much as I do other Disney movies, but I wouldn't say I dislike the film. I think as I learn more about art and how nuanced the process of piecing things together is, the less likely I am to be purely critical of the artistic process itself. There are plenty of problematic things to critique when speaking about Disney, and I will continue to not hold back my thoughts, but I want to help myself not be consumed by artistic cynicism and needing to find bad things, because ultimately art that I think I don't like becomes my favorite art somewhere down the line. I just need more time to understand it. So I love the music of Hercules, and the Muses are some of my favorite parts of a Disney Renaissance film, but the film as a whole just isn't as memorable to me as other ones. That's why Hercules confuses me. For me, it represents a new piece in the puzzle of how I'm just now understanding that the opposite of liking something is not necessarily disliking it. I have often dreamed of a far-off place where a great warm welcome will be waiting for me, and the crowds will cheer when they see my face, and a voice keeps saying, "This is where I'm meant to be." I will find my way. I can go the distance. I'll be there someday. If I can be strong, I know every mile will be worth my while. I would go most anywhere to feel like I belong.